Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the latest Detroit Regional Chamber Town Hall session. We are so pleased to have you with us and for you to take your valuable time and spend it with the Detroit Regional Chamber this morning. Today, my colleague, Devin O'Reilly, and myself are pleased to host Mark S. Lee. Mark, as you probably well know, is a well-known media commentator on small business issues. You see him on television quite a bit. You see him associated with the Michigan Chronicle and Crain's Detroit Business. But Mark is also the CEO of his very successful firm, the Lee Group, which specializes in integrated marketing, helping small and medium-sized businesses, primarily in the Detroit area, improve their business standing. And we're going to talk to Mark today about what he is seeing in the small business environment in and around Detroit. Mark, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Andy, excuse me, Sandy, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, listen, let's start with what people probably know you least for, but it's probably what takes up most of your time, and that is your firm, the Lee Group. Talk to us about the Lee Group, what it does, what kind of businesses you work with, and why companies work with the Lee Group.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to talk about the Lee Group. The Lee Group is 12 years old, and we are a marketing consulting organization. And we focus primarily on strategic marketing planning in the areas of branding, rebranding, integrated communications. We also offer training and development. We work with primarily small to medium-sized organizations. And the reasons that people will work with the Lee Group is going way back, because I have 25 plus years of marketing experience in the corporate space. I was a CMO for many organizations across Metro Detroit as well as across the country. And what we do is we bring a level of experience, thoughtfulness, a process focused on addressing business solutions. And then the other part of the Lee Group is we do public speaking. I do public speaking here in Detroit as well as across the country, where we talk about and address specific business issues.
Right. And so when you work with businesses, are they primarily trying to build market share? Are they trying to build brand? What kinds of projects do you most work on with your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of organizations will come to the Lee Group and ask us to help them redefine or refine the overall marketing strategy. So, for example, we work with for-profit and nonprofit organizations as well. They realize that their business has gotten stale. They may have hit the wall in terms of growth. So what we will do is we will work with businesses to help them fine tune or redefine their business / marketing strategy, help them to work and identify their target audiences as well, and then come up with very specific marketing solutions focused on taking their business to the next level in terms of growth. And that's the primary mission of the Lee Group, is to help you certainly identify solutions while growing your business short and longer term.
So why don't let's talk about what you are seeing in the business community when you talk about redefining a business or talking about updating a business strategy. Certainly COVID has presented all of us, businesses large and small, with probably the premier challenge that we're going to be facing in our business lives. What are you seeing out there in general in the Detroit business community? And then we can talk about specifics about what challenges businesses are having right now. But generally, what are you seeing in the small business space in Detroit?
No, and that's an outstanding question. Excuse me. I'm seeing in Detroit right now, Sandy, quite candidly, I'm seeing a lot of businesses struggle, quite frankly. In the city of Detroit, and I have written about it, I've talked about it, as you know, we have 62,000 small businesses in the city of Detroit, according to the 2012 U.S. Census data. And we're the fourth largest city in the country. And before the pandemic hit, we had a nice trajectory. We were growing, we were getting new businesses that were opening on a regular basis. But clearly, since the pandemic has hit, we have noticed that basically has come to a halt. It's really slowed down. And I think that the biggest challenge that I'm seeing from my perspective is of the 62,000 businesses, about 80% of those businesses are minority-owned businesses. And those are the ones in particular that are struggling. And I pulled out a couple of data points to help us to better understand exactly what's going on nationally. Let's bring it down to the Detroit level as well. But for example, there are 1.1 million Black-owned businesses across the country. Excuse me, and 41% of those businesses have either closed temporarily or have shut down completely. Now let's take that down to the Detroit level. We have 51,000 minority-owned businesses in the city of Detroit. 51 of the 62,000 businesses. So even if you just follow that logic, and I don't have Detroit specific data, we can see that a lot of those businesses are beginning to struggle. And I think, to me, that's the biggest risk, one of the biggest risks and biggest challenges that we're currently seeing in Detroit. So that trajectory has flattened out. It's beginning to decline in terms of the positivity in terms of how small business owners in Detroit are feeling right now.
Well, I think we're all unfortunately expecting so many of our small businesses to close. In fact, a few weeks ago, we had the opportunity to host the head of the Michigan Restaurant Association, Restaurant and Lodging Association, and he was predicting that at least a third of the restaurants across the state of Michigan would be shuttered permanently. Because of the COVID crisis. Restaurants have been such a huge part of not just Detroit's renaissance, but part of our fabric in our neighborhoods for decades. What are you seeing in terms of the restaurant space here in Detroit?
That is an outstanding question. I actually did some visiting of restaurants this past weekend just to prepare for this discussion this morning. And I sat down and talked to one of the restaurant owners. And I said, let's have a candid conversation. I'm not going to say who it was. Obviously, I'm maintaining his privacy. I said, how is business going? He said, we were down significantly. We were very close to closing, quite frankly. But what they were able to do is they were able to pivot. And what I mean by that is clearly, as opposed to just offering dine-in service, they obviously started to offer those services on the sidewalks. A lot of the suburban communities and restaurants in the city are now allowing you to eat outdoors. He said the business, by virtue of the state allowing that, the municipality allowing them to do that, they've been able now to pick up a significant portion of the lost revenue as a result of people not going to dine in early on. My question to him was, and the other restaurants that I visited, have you recaptured 100% of the revenue? He says, no, we've not captured 100%, but he says we're a lot better off today than what we are 3 or 4 months ago. So to answer your question, I think the restaurant industry, certainly, which is a very volatile sector within our city and across the country, but it's a viable part of our economy, we're starting to see that industry come back. But it's not going to be at the pre-pandemic level, but we're seeing them beginning to recoup some of the revenues that were lost earlier this year. So I think there's a great example of them pivoting, leveraging the change in the business model, the delivery content, in order to maintain some of their lost revenue.
That is really gratifying to hear for several different reasons. Number one is restaurants are really what help define a community. When you think about one of the reasons why you go out into either your community or another community, it's to go out to dine. And restaurants are a huge reason for that. And secondly, as you alluded to, Mark, restaurants operate on an incredibly narrow margin. I'm not sure people understand how narrow restaurant margins are and why it's so difficult to make it a go in the restaurant industry. So we actually started on our site, on our business resource site, along with our Let's Detroit site, resources where you can kind of find restaurants in the Detroit area that are open, and we're encouraging you to give them a go because we want these businesses to stay in business because we need them after the pandemic as part of our fabric.
Absolutely, and I also had the opportunity to see more specifically, and this is more broad than the restaurant industry in terms of other trends. But for example, if you look at Yelp, we all know about Yelp, and people leave their comments and things of that sort. But 1,500 Metro Detroit small businesses with a presence on Yelp have closed temporarily or permanently. Think about that. And that goes back to March through July 10th. So over that 4-month window, I don't know how many businesses in Detroit certainly are on Yelp, but clearly, according to the initial data, these businesses are still somewhat less confident. Okay. The other part I wanted to say is that another survey was conducted that 15% of Michigan businesses are still not confident. And now this goes back to May, per the Small Business Association of Michigan, but 15% of businesses were not necessarily confident coming out of the pandemic. So I wanted to point that out because let's go back to the restaurant industry. And there was a lot of uncertainty there. One of the things I want to give them credit for, and we were talking before this call about some of the restaurants in Midtown Detroit and how you're starting to see a lot of activity, a lot of hustle and bustle. You just can't sit back right now and not do anything. You really have to anticipate in these challenging times, like the restaurant industry, and you have to pivot and understand where people want to do their business. They still want to come in for dine-in? Do they still want to carry out? Do they still want to sit outside? Because I don't know, Sandy, we talked before this broadcast this morning. I had the opportunity of going out this weekend, and it was nice to sit outside and have a good food, have good food and socialize distance, from a distance standpoint with people haven't seen in a while. So I think that we'll see the restaurant industry continue to bounce back, but it's not going to bounce back to what we were 6 months ago.
Let's move on to some other industries, Mark. And by the way, let me remind our audience that on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar screen, there's a box that says questions. And if you'd like to pose a question to today's guest, Mark S. Lee, go ahead and type in your question in that box, and my colleague Devin O'Reilly from the Chamber will make sure your question gets asked. Mark, moving on to some other industries, what are you seeing in terms of industries or types of businesses in and around Detroit that are truly thriving in this new environment? I know we spent a lot of time talking about, the challenges of COVID and the stress under businesses, and we'll certainly talk more about that. But are there certain kinds of businesses that are actually found a way to thrive in today's environment?
Yeah, there are a couple of industries that come to mind. One is the cannabis industry. Cannabis. I actually just talked to someone yesterday on my radio show. He's opening up a business in downtown Detroit. And if you look at Ann Arbor as the example, I know it's right outside Metro Detroit, but it's certainly
part of our region. Absolutely.
They're part of our region. And look at the industry, how it's doing in Ann Arbor. Detroit is now beginning to get into the mix. The other cities in the metropolitan Detroit area, this metropolitan area of 5 million people, where this industry is continuing to grow. And a lot of people are beginning, when I say a lot, a significant number of individuals are beginning to view this as a business opportunity. And I'm talking specifically as it relates to medical marijuana, for example. And somewhere down the road, the recreational space. So that's an industry that continues to emerge itself. I think other forms that you're beginning to see, quite frankly, are in the service industry. Technology is still holding its own. Technology is holding its own because, look, Sandy, you and I are having this conversation via, technology. And a lot of small businesses are struggling with, what do I do? I'm not exactly sure how to use this technology to integrate as part of my business strategy. So if you're considering starting a business, or if you need to pivot and look at growth opportunities, the service space / technology space is another phenomenal area in terms of business opportunity. Healthcare. If you're a healthcare provider, small business in that space, it's another growth opportunity. Yes, there are challenges across the healthcare system, but because of COVID-19, obviously, there's an opportunity for people to come in that space. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're thinking about it, it's a tremendous opportunity of growth as well. So those are 3 distinct industries that I see firsthand that continue to have growth opportunities.
That's great. And also, I would just say, just from personal experience talking to our friends, businesses that focus on things like home improvement or landscaping. So many people are at home most of the time, and they're focusing on kind of their nesting space, and they're
Yeah.
spending a lot of time and money on home improvement activities.
And you think about that, and you think about the home improvement. That's a
So,
great
Mark,
example. We know
let's
that.
ask.
Go ahead. I apologize.
Go ahead.
Oh,
No worries.
what I was
I know
going to
sometimes there's a little bit of a delay.
What I was going to say briefly in the home improvement space, you make a very good point. We know that kids are getting ready to go back to school. Some are going to be going back online, and certainly some might be going back to the classroom. So my point is, is your home space is prepared for that? So the home improvement sector provides an opportunity to help families to get prepared for this upcoming school year as well. That's a great example, Sandy, for pointing that out in terms of another growth opportunity for businesses.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, there was a little bit of a delay there. Sorry, we tripped over each other for a second.
That's okay.
Let me go back to an issue you just referred to, but I think it's a really important one, and that is minority-owned businesses. Are you seeing a differential, Mark, in the ability of minority-owned businesses versus non-minority owned businesses and accessing, the various state and federal assistance programs that have been created, such as at the federal level, we have the Paycheck Protection program that went through traditional banks. The state level has similar related programs. Are you seeing a differential between how minority companies are able to access programs that are there for their benefit?
Yes, there's a significant gap right now, Sandy. I'll be rather candid with you here. A lot of minority-owned businesses are having challenges accessing capital. And one of the reasons, for example, the PPP, a lot of those dollars did not get down to minority-owned businesses for a couple of reasons. One is a lot of minority-owned businesses don't have relationships with financial institutions, for example, as with the general market, the majority-owned businesses. And so some of the small businesses kind of got left out of that, if you will. All right, number one. Number two, when it also comes to access to capital, a lot of minority-owned businesses don't have the resources in the bank as the majority-owned businesses. Okay, let me give you a couple of examples. On average, a small business has enough resources in the bank to last 2 weeks. Think about that. Enough resources on average to last 2 weeks. And if a business is thinking about starting, they have enough resources to maybe get up to $10,000 to start a business. Okay, so those numbers for minority-owned businesses are even worse than that. So the access to capital is a challenge, and which is why that you see a lot of these grant programs beginning to come out. Other programs through the SBA and other partners out there across the city are making a concerted effort to reach out to minority-owned businesses, to various grant programs, other resources to get them some capital. The challenge with that, though, is when you think about that, the grants are generally $5, $10, $15, $20,000, which is great. It's a nice short-term fix, but longer term, they still have the resources to invest back into the business to sustain itself long term. And generally speaking, the answer is no. So there are some gaps there when it comes to the majority-owned businesses versus minority-owned businesses. And I would argue that we have to continue to push those programs, push those resources, push the knowledge down to those types of businesses so that the playing field can become that much more balanced as well.
Mark, let me ask you one more question before I turn it over to Devin O'Reilly, because I've been told we now have some questions in the chat room. But my question before we turn it over to Devin, to you, Mark, is what do you recommend when you work with a small business, or a small business calls into your radio show and doesn't have a banking relationship established, and maybe isn't aware of some of the state or even federal programs that are available to them? What kinds of things do you recommend that a small company like that do to put themselves in a position to take advantage of programs that may be offered to help companies get through COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. One, have a board of advisors. Right now, don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think a lot of times small businesses have a tendency of living in their small bubble, in that bubble. And when I ask people on a regular basis, do you have a board of advisors? A lot of them will say no. It does not have to be a formal board. It could be an informal board of advisors, someone in finance, right? Someone in legal, someone in marketing. Just identify the functional areas, reach out to them. And from a financial standpoint, you need to have someone, have a financial advisor. I'm not talking about a formal financial advisor, again, an informal one, someone that you can bounce ideas off of. What was interesting, Sandy, is when we got when the PPP, I knew several people who received the PPP. They were calling me and telling me what they did, and I said, well, you need to share that knowledge back to somebody else. So it reinforces the point that if you have an informal board of advisors, I would encourage people to do that. Number two is to be proactive. Don't just sit back right now and feel sorry for yourself. You have to be proactive. You have to do your research. Make sure that you know what resources are out there. And then lastly, adjust your business strategy, right? Learn to pivot. We talked about the restaurant industry earlier. We talked about how they pivoted. So from a business standpoint, if you feel like if you feel as though you've hit the wall, you have to adjust. You have to pivot and leverage technology. This is not the time to sit back and not do a thing. So those are three pieces of advice I would give the businesses right now that really are struggling and trying to figure out how to get to the next level to get through this pandemic.
Great, that's great advice. Devin O'Reilly, why don't you join us and take some questions from our chat room?
Thank you. Thanks, Sandy. And thank you, Mark, for doing this. I think it's really important and valuable to have you here. We've shared a lot of conversations previously on small business, and I know that you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to that. So some of the questions we have, it's very specific, but kind of getting broader. There's someone who's asking, they're a retail boutique in Detroit that relies on foot traffic. And they're trying to shift to an online presence, but that obviously takes some time to build up that awareness. So, with the traffic to their brick and mortar starting to slow down, they're starting to think about shutting down. What advice would you give, or what kind of ideas do you have for someone who's trying to make that transition from foot traffic to getting an online presence?
I would strongly encourage that person right now to come up with an online strategy. Look at your business model, understand what we talked about earlier, with Sandy and I chatted earlier. Where's your revenue stream coming from? How much money are you getting from, historically, have you gotten from the brick and mortar? How much money now do you think you need to achieve to get from the online piece as well? So you need to understand your channels of distribution. And in terms of, do you need to shut down? I can't make that decision for you. That is for you to decide. But before you do that, I would ask you to go back and review your business strategy. If you don't have an online presence right now, and I'm going to say this emphatically, 1000%. If you are a brick and mortar business only, it's incumbent upon you. It's incumbent upon you right now to put your resources into an online strategy and make that an integral part of your business model. If you don't do that, then you will not survive long term. If you do that, just as Sandy and I talked about the restaurant industry earlier, you will begin to see, you'll be able to monetize that business opportunity. So the first step is to develop an approach that encapsulates or integrates the online approach. If you're not comfortable doing that, reach out to an advisor, reach out to someone who can help you come up with that online strategy for your business and adjust your business model accordingly.
Exactly. Do you have any?
Devin, let me.
Sure.
Hang on, I was just going to jump in for a second. I'm sorry, Devin. Mark, one of the things that I saw that I thought was really innovative, it wasn't in the city of Detroit, but it was in the region, is a bunch of small businesses, brick and mortar small businesses, kind of banding together to kind of create kind of a mini marketing strategy to bring, people down to that little, part of the street. It was like 3 or 4 businesses, all different kinds of brick and mortar businesses, and really kind of stressing, hey, listen, we've got the social distancing down. We're requiring everyone to wear a mask. We're all going to do a big sale. Come on down, but work with your neighbors as well too. Is an idea that I've seen that hopefully can be another.
Devin, before you ask the next question, real quick, another example, Sandy, along that line, some businesses are offering pop-ups, right? So what they're doing is they're taking what's inside their brick and mortar, they're putting a pop-up in front of the store, still practicing social distancing. So there's another strategy to try to get people to certainly come up to the curb or that curbside service. The last piece, very quickly, before your next question, is that Livernois and McNichols, that Livernois and 6 Mile, Live 6, they're doing a program this week called Market on the App. It's a great idea. They're doing everything virtually, but they're going to have performances. They're going to be selling their wares, if you will, online. People can click in through Facebook Live and through other forms of technology to get access to the business. So, Sandy, to your point, different ways of bringing people together. You still got to find a way to keep your business and your products and services in front of people during these challenging times.
Yeah, you're both really ahead of the game on the questions and what people are interested in. Because I was gonna ask some questions about, what are some of the innovative ways that you've seen, Mark, being out there, that small businesses have adapted and pivoted to this new normal that we're in, and then also about how do businesses help get the word out that they're open, because I think there's a lot of uncertainty sometimes, and maybe a business closed, and you may have gone on their website a couple months ago and they were closed, or you drove past and they were closed. But how do they now say, wait, we're open now? We've got, we're trying to open back up. We're available for services again. How can businesses get back out there and let the public know they're open? And I think what you mentioned is part of that is partnering with other businesses to kind of take it as a kind of team approach to flipping that open sign back around.
But Devin, a step beyond that's a great idea. But now is the time to double down with your customers. Now is the time to reach out to them on a consistent basis. You know what? Post things on your website. Do an e-blast. Let them know that you're still open. Hey, I'm a consultant. Sandy asked me earlier, about some advice and counsel. This is one of the things that I did as soon as the pandemic hit. Yes, I want the money, don't get me wrong, but one of the things that I did was I reached out to every single one of my clients, and all I said to them was, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you. I'm going to work with you every step of the way, right? And then when the dollars started to flow back in, people started contacting me and said, Mark, we remember what you said. We're with you. We want to work with you. So to that person who's saying, what do I do about my customers? How do I engage with them? Now is the time to still engage with them. Let them know that you're around. Let them know that you're still open, that you're offering services, that you're pivoting. We're offering things online now. That's what people want. They want reassurance to know that you're still there. Because if I don't hear from you as a business owner, I'm going to assume that you're closed. So the assumption is make that assumption and then work with and communicate with people on an ongoing basis. And that will help to maintain and solidify the overall relationship as well.
Sure. Do you have any specific recommendations or suggestions for those individuals who are interested in shifting to a more digital or to a more online format, but may not be literate in social media and website building and things like that?
That's me. I was one of them. I literally, I was fortunate enough where I self-taught me. I taught myself about social media. I'm also, what Sandy didn't necessarily say earlier, I'm also a college professor. I'm an adjunct professor at Eastern Michigan University, Northwood University, and Madonna University. And so I have the wherewithal to teach those types of classes. So my point is, now's the time to educate yourself, reach out to those who are comfortable in that space. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get that type of support in the digital space. I tell people, if you don't have a lot of resources, again, use your network, use that informal board of advisor that we talked about earlier, and align yourself with someone who's comfortable in that space and rely on them as a partner for you. You'll be amazed that people are willing to help you. They want to help you. You just have to know the questions to ask and know who you should be aligning yourself with. So the digital space is important. If you're not comfortable with it, identify someone. When I first started, real quick, is I actually called my kids. I started my business 12 years ago. I started the online space probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and I reached out to my kids. I said, tell me about social media. And that was my first endeavor, if you would, into the whole social media space by relying on something as simple as my kids. And now I obviously have grown and I advanced, and I'm working with others in that space as well.
Yeah, I would add on, Mark, exactly what you said. I think that a lot of people who maybe are not familiar with digital marketing and social media, really, first of all, Google and learn about search engine optimization and SEO.
Absolutely.
That's a huge, term that people, an acronym that people use all the time now. But I think they'd be surprised to find at how simple and also how inexpensive social media marketing and advertising is. It's really a bang for your buck that you may be surprised to find.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more.
Well, Sandy, I'll turn it over to you.
Here's a question. Yeah, no, thanks, Devin. But actually, I'm going to pose a question to the both of you as we get ready to conclude the session with Mark Lee. And Devin, I'll start with you. What are some of the better resource sites for a small business that might be struggling, to peruse, so they can understand what kind of free resources are out there?
Sure. So, I mean, sure. Between Mark and I think we'll probably cover some of the bases. But Techtown is great. They have their retail boot camp. They have their SWAT Cities initiative. They're doing a lot of free pro bono counseling with small businesses. So Techtown Detroit is a really strong service. I would also mention, the DEGC is doing some good work with small businesses. The Build Institute is a fantastic resource, for those businesses that are maybe even looking to take that next step into kind of growing their business, growing into a more digital platform. The Build Institute classes are really great for that. And then looking into, depending on the size of your business, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program has been really effective in what they've been able to do to grow businesses. And then also the SBA, the Emerging Leaders SBA program. So those are my shout outs. Mark, I'm sure you've got some too.
Yeah, a couple others will be Bamboo Detroit, another good one. You also have the SBDC, Small Business Development Center, and one that a lot of people overlook are local universities. Look at the local universities. A lot of the universities house entrepreneurial programs here in Detroit and across our great region. So I would encourage you to reach out directly to your local university as well to find out the types of programs that are out there for you. And by the way, a lot of these programs are free.
Great. Well, listen, everyone, I think that is a great way to end, which is to provide small businesses in Detroit and around Detroit resources that they need to survive this huge challenge. Our small businesses are so incredibly important to our region. Small businesses employ more people than our big businesses. More people get their first job from small businesses than they do from larger businesses. And small businesses are really the fabric of our local communities. They're the ones that are providing the unique services and the unique products. Detroit, our neighborhoods wouldn't be Detroit and our neighborhoods without our small businesses. So it's awfully important that they that we help them through this. I'd also add, in terms of resources, the Business Resource Center at the Detroit Regional Chamber. It is a kind of an all-encompassing center for large businesses and small businesses and even individuals, and I recommend people, that's a good place to start to get you to other resources. Mark, as we come to the end of our time together, let me just turn it over to you for some final words as we wrap up.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank Sandy and Devin for the opportunity to talk about this important piece of business. I know we're in challenging times, everyone. And Sandy hit the point ahead. Small businesses are economic generators across not just our city, but the entire country. It's vitally important that we help these businesses. We provide them with the level of support them, go out and shop with them, purchase online, but we want them to be successful. Yes, we are in difficult times, but here's the light at the end of the tunnel. this too shall pass somewhere down the road. But when it does pass, if you survive this pandemic, if you've adjusted your business model, you're going to be stronger, faster, and more resilient. And I really think that you're going to be more confident as you think about growing your business longer term. So view this as an opportunity, as we are in the clouds of darkness right now. It's going to be okay. Be patient and just stay vigilant and stay focused. And thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Great. Mark, thank you so much. I just want to remind our audience that this session, along with all of our other town hall sessions, are going to be captured and cataloged. So if you'd like to replay it, or if you want to recommend someone else download the session, it'll be available on the Detroit Regional Chamber website under the Town Hall section. So please feel free to view this again and recommend it to others. With that, I want, on behalf of Devin O'Reilly from the Detroit Regional Chamber and myself, we want to thank today's special guest, Mark S. Lee. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being such a great friend of the Chamber, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Be well.